Hello, everybody. Welcome to Short Stories, where I get into the minds of some of the world's best photographers and try to get insights that can help all of us become better photographers. Today, I have somebody very special with us. Sankar Salvady is a name that should be familiar to many landscape photographers around the world, and for good reason. He has been on the cover of Asian Photography magazine, giving him the title Landscape Maestro. He has conducted workshops and presented on Better Photography magazine and for Adobe India. And his work has been published by the highly acclaimed Landscape Photography magazine. And his work has been published in a book by the National Geographic Press. On a personal note, my own landscape photography style has been heavily influenced by seeing Shankar's work. I reached out to Shankar asking him if he'd do a landscape workshop for me. And this was, much before the Instagram days. And it wasn't as easy to reach out to photographers back then, but, he was kind enough to agree. And this is what he did. He picked me up at 1 a.m. in the morning and drove me to Yosemite, which is a 4-hour drive from where we are. And I was like, why would you do that? Why 1 a.m.? And when we reached, it was just a little bit before sunrise. And, this is what Shankar told me. See, Swami, this is why we left at 1 a.m. The first thing I want you to appreciate about landscape photography is the quality of light. And so, Shankar, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Let me start by asking you,
Thank you, Swami.
what makes a good landscape photo in your opinion?
All right. Thank you, Swami, first of all, for that very kind, warm introduction. Let's kind of divide up a landscape photo and then see what makes it look good, right? See, I think there are few grammars in any photography, right? I'm sure everyone knows about the 1/3 rule, for example, or the leading lines, for example, and right, and that is for sure. So all those grammatical rules for sure, apply to any genre of photography. That includes landscape photography as well. And in landscape photography, apart from that, there are a few unique things, right? And light, of course, is in photography is of paramount importance. I mean, there is, yeah, photography is at the end of the day, it's an art of light, literally translates to. So without light, without good light, there is no good photograph. So, but what makes it so different is in the case of landscape photography, the light is something created by nature, and you have to be excellent in reading what a good light is and what is not a good light, right? I think that is the reason why, in fact, I took you to Yosemite in the middle of the night to see, to appreciate what, how good light makes a big difference to a photograph, right? If you are, if sunrise is at 6 a.m., right, going at 7 a.m. is like a sin in landscape photography, because the quality of light has fallen down so badly within that. Every minute that the quality of light changes, isn't it, Swami? So I think that is of paramount importance as well. And other than that, what makes a landscape photograph different, right? So, okay, yeah. I mean, I want to talk about the concept of foreground, midground, and background, for example, right? I think it's and that's very different in my opinion in landscape photography. Um, so for example, right, you so our eyes, they say, it kind of sees the world at, like, around 50 millimeter, I believe. That's, no, 35 millimeter to 50 millimeter, that's where our eyes see, right? Landscape photography, a lot of landscape photography exists between 14 millimeter or 13 millimeter to probably around 30 millimeters. There's a lot of landscape photography that exists in that range, and our eyes are not trained to see that, Swami. So I think in a landscape photography world, I think it's a very, very, very important attribute that you need to develop to see the world in a wide angle lens. Okay. um, so that is something you cannot do like without practice, because our eyes are not trained for wide angle. Like, for example, if you see a wide angle photo, some beautiful landscape photo, a small smudge of snow in the foreground, or a small flower in the foreground, right? In your eyes it looks really small, right? And there might be a lake in the background that might be huge, and a mountain which is like humongous. Okay. Our eyes kind of is trained to the scale in which you see it is very different from what a landscape photo sees it. If you're at 11 mm, you place your lens close to the flower or the snow, right? That probably will occupy one third of your photo, as much as the lake in the background are and much bigger than the mountain in the background, for example, right?
Right.
So I think that is one thing which makes a landscape photo, I think, very special, and how you layer them, right?
So a sense of
And
perspective.
sense of perspective, right? Exactly. And also, I think in landscape photography, there is a lot of chaos. For lack of a better word, let me choose the word chaos. So, okay, let me actually kind of compare that with a portrait photo, for example, right? In a portrait photo, or let's say a bird photography, right? You're using a telephoto lens. If it's a bird photography, you're going to use like 600 mm or 800 mm, and upwards, where you have an excellent background separation, and you are focusing on that one particular bird. It might be eating something, it might be flapping its wings or whatever. And there is an isolation. There's a very clear isolation that you achieve. And portrait, right? You're shooting at 85 mm or 100 mm or 135 mm, for example. And there again, right, you are isolating the subject, you are blurring out the background beautifully, and the light is controlled, right? But in landscape photography, it's chaos. The composition doesn't scream out in front of you,
Yeah.
right? So the art of landscape photography involves, kind of, you have to develop this skill of, uh, finding a pattern within the chaos. Basically you have to remove the chaos out and find something really pretty, in that really chaotic, there is like, so if a non-photographer goes to that spot, he may not see anything there. But your eyes have to be trained to kind of, that's what brings the. So in fact, right, a lot of times I'm sure, you would have heard that as well, right? You actually take a landscape photo from a particular spot, and then somebody sees that, uh, uh, they don't see that. If not for a non-trained eye, there is no composition there. When they go there, it was not that pretty. Oh man, your photo looked so beautiful, but the spot was not that pretty, right? They say that because because there is a lot of chaos, and photography, kind of landscape photography, really removes the chaos carefully, and then brings the exact composition outside, right? That is one aspect of landscape photography, which is both challenging, which is as well as which is makes it interesting as well, in my opinion.
I think you answered all my questions. I don't have anything left to ask you.
Is the interview over then?
No, no. Let's zoom into a few things here, right? No, it's very interesting how you noted trying to find the simplicity in the chaos. In fact, a lot of your pictures, they're nicely composed and they have really nice light, but there is a certain simplicity to them. It's not about the technical perfection, if I can put it that way. There's something deeper in your pictures, right? um, can you talk a little bit about that? All of these pictures here, right? The first thing that screams to mind is simplicity. And you also have a lot of leading lines in your pictures. In fact, if I can uh, uh, sort of summarize some of your pictures, leading lines, cars and trucks. Yeah,
I have fascination for them, man.
yeah.
I
So
think
is
since
that
you have
a
a lot.
personal fascination?
Yeah, I think so. I think I am generally very fascinated by trains, trucks, and all that stuff. Though it is not, technically pure landscape photography. You don't want a lot of man-made objects in your photography, right? But see, that's what, right? So, for me, to be honest, right? So, I do not call myself a landscape photographer. Okay, I am a photographer who kind of photographs what I like. Okay, so that is what is my photography all about. I think just to go back a little, right? So my journey as photographer did not start as a landscape photographer, and it was not a planned uh, you know detour either. It just happened so that I moved to California, in 2010, and what happened was I started, during the long weekends, I started traveling around California, to the northwest, to the southwest. For people who don't know what I mean by southwest, is states like Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. So the part which is called the Colorado Plateau, and northwest is Oregon and Washington, and around California, like Yosemite, or Death Valley and stuff, right? I mean, I was so inspired by the nature, Swami. I mean, those are the kind of landscapes I have not seen, and I mean, there is no way. I'm sure you kind of
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying, right? It's like
There's,
there is no way you cannot get inspired by those, isn't it,
yeah.
Swami?
There's so much
Oh my God.
beauty.
Oh my goodness. That, I mean, yeah, exactly. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So, so that is how my landscape journey started. Okay. But then, it is not like, I wanted to become a landscape photographer. I want to shoot only landscapes. If you see my portfolio, right, I mean, there is so many, like in India, I always shoot people in my photos. I mean, there is so much character to the people there. So wherever there is character, and in fact, if you ask, one of my favorite places to photograph, Varanasi in India is one of them. There is no nature there. There is no way, you can call it a, nature's paradise, right? It's all about people there. But there
Yeah.
is so much beauty to those chaos in that city. So what I'm trying to say is, like, Somi, so my photos are purely um, driven by what I like, right? In fact, some of the technically good photographs, like, a reflection, Yosemite or something, may not be my personal favorites. Yes, I had good light. I was fortunate to be there, and I was able to capture a good photo. But I think that's not my style.
Yeah.
If I, if you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think.
So it seems like you're looking for character, whatever it is that you're trying to shoot. Is that?
Correct. So there is you kind of, when you see something, you get excited and your heart skips a beat. It kind of, there's a little emotional attachment you get to something.
Yeah.
It's something.
Yeah.
I think that is the kind of photo I really like. Like, so if, for example, since you mentioned cars and trucks, right? I'll tell you something. Right? So let's say, a small or long winding road, okay, and there is this one car, which is going there. It tells me some stories, right? What is this guy doing there, right, in this long isolated road? Is he on his journey of self-discovery? What is he trying to do, right? There can be so many stories in there. He's really far away. I'm not, interviewing him like Humans of New York or Humans of Bombay, but I'm sure he has a story to tell as to why he's here in this weird hours, in this cloudy, rainy day, trying to go,
Yeah.
So I think that tells me, I don't know, there's an appeal there, to me.
There
Uh,
is there is still so it seems like you have a innate love for nature, and you are able to find these kinds of circumstances, and this character that whatever that is, you're able to find that perhaps more in nature, um, right?
that, and I think also this curiosity, something makes me curious. There are certain things which don't make me curious, so I don't generally necessarily take photos of those. Like, I don't take a lot of portraits, for example, or like food photography or object photography. I'm not too curious about those, but there are certain things which makes me very,
Yeah.
very intriguing and curious.
Right.
So
Where do you find your vantage points? Because sometimes when I look at your pictures, and obviously these are the days before drones, I wonder, like, where did you take the shot from? It seems to be from a slightly higher elevated point. Yeah, like this is an example. Like, where do you take these shots from? It seems like you're slightly higher.
yeah, so if you see this road, yeah, that is for sure, absolutely. So I was in a small hilltop. So it's actually, in front, it was an extension of the same road that you see in this. Okay, but it was at a slightly higher elevation, and I mean, that elevation, just that composition just screamed in front of me, because there was this car, and then you have this amazing road, country road, with grass on the side. I mean, there is nothing not to like in this.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah, and
beautiful.
then again, also being Swami, I think there is no, see, this was like a very weird, like there is a completely unplanned random drive I was doing in Montana. This was
Hmm.
somewhere near Idaho Montana border. uh, Extremely random. I just took a detour, random detour, and I was just driving alone. um, and and you ended up in this photo. There are a lot of things in landscape photography, in my opinion, right, that you don't want to plan, or any travel photography. I think I consider myself more a travel photographer, because no landscape photographer will take a photo like this, pure landscape, I think. So to be very open-minded, right, to be inquisitive. I think that helps in everything, right? As an entrepreneur, I'm sure you also, as an entrepreneur, I think that attribute helps you as an entrepreneur as well. Being
Is,
inquisitive,
is
general
there
curiosity, right?
is there a way to develop that kind of inquisitiveness, in photography? Is there a way to develop that sense of imagination and openness for somebody who, maybe it doesn't come naturally to them as it might have for you?
Interesting, very interesting. So, okay, that's an interesting question. So, we haven't thought of an answer for that. Okay, let me think. Right, let's think through it. Right. Okay, I think for maybe, right. I think spending time with nature, more time with nature. I think in general will make you fall in love with nature. Right. I think we all grow up in urban or semi-urban areas where we are not exposed to as much nature. I think the moment you step into nature and you start spending time with them, I think there is a natural uh, love you develop for the nature. I think that is probably one of the primary ingredients you might need. I think that's spending time.
Mm.
And also, I think there is a lot of inspiration you can take from uh, following other photographers as well, right?
Who
Uh,
inspires you?
Oh, that's very interesting. So my journey, right? So I grew up in rural Tamil Nadu. I'm sure, I think I've talked earlier also. So and I didn't have a lot of. I mean, of course, right, in the growing up the 80s and 90s, right? There was no social media or anything. So my primary inspiration in the early days came from Tamil movies, to be honest, especially cinematography of Santosh Sivan and PC Shira. Those two were huge inspirations. I mean, I mean, I didn't, I mean, I wasn't sure that I didn't know that I was getting inspired, but that if I go back and think, right, those were my primary inspirations. I mean, their cinematography just stood out.
Are there any particular
In their
movies
cinema.
that stand out to you?
There are quite a few. I mean, I would say Talapati, um, the movie directed by Maniratnam, um, Agni Nakshatram, again, a movie directed by Maniratnam, but its cinematography was done by Mr. P.C. Sriram.
So these
Um,
movies. I'm just trying to understand how that evolves into an the interest into photography. Is it? Are you? Did the scenes composition or anything like that in this?
exactly, right. The
Yeah.
use of light, the
Yeah.
compositions, the use of silhouettes. Um, uh, I mean, there was, and the use of golden hours, for example, right? Like,
Right.
for example, this Chinna Chinna Asai song in Roja, I'm
Right.
sure,
Right. Right. Right.
for those times. I mean, today, if you look at it, it may not be just 480p resolution. There is not, I mean, if you look at it in big screen, it doesn't look that great. But, if you look at 90s, early 90s, when you look at those songs, right, or even songs in Pudu Vellai Madai in Roja, for example, right? Those shots were so beautiful, and they were, a lot of them were shot in golden hours. So those are things that I mean, technically you weren't aware of, but you were indirectly getting inspired by those shots. The shows
Right.
were like, they stuck in you. They kind of, they stay inside you for a long time, right? And then, when I actually started doing photography, one of my earliest, biggest inspirations was Mr. Steve McCurry. Right? He's a travel photographer. He's not a landscape photographer, but I mean, his compositions have so much life in them. Like, you would immediately start imagining stories about each of the pictures, right? He doesn't have to tell that. We post the photo, but there is a story there. I mean, there are so many photos, Swami, of Steve McCurry. I can keep talking about.
What's the
I
name
can talk about
again?
his Steve McCurry.
Oh, Steve McCurry. Yeah. Yeah.
STEV, yeah,
Of course.
Steve
Yeah.
McCurry, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So I think those are. some of my earliest inspirations, and then later Flickr, man, oh my god! So that was like a revelation to me. I think I would say it's one of the inflection points for me.
Yeah.
I was still in grad school here, so I was not actively doing photography, but Flickr gave me this opportunity to really look at photographs from other parts of the world, right? And there was so, I mean, it was like the only social media for photographers at that time. So everybody was there. All good photographers
Yeah.
are part of Flickr in those days. I'm sure, like, that I'm talking about like 2006, 2007 time frame, right?
Right. Right.
So that was a huge inspiration. Like all those photographs, I was just looking at the possibilities, right? Oh wow, you can take a photo like this. Oh, you can take a photo like that, right? Oh, even a bus can be a subject. Oh, even a even a monkey can be a good subject. Like you kind of keep getting inspired by that, right? Those are some of my biggest early inspirations.
Is that
So
something that you do, like when you want to take a photo? Do you often look at other people's photos for inspiration before you go to the location, see what they have shot, or do you go with a blank mind? Like, what is the process that you generally follow?
oh, that's a great question. So to rephrase your question, so what is the general process I follow to when I go to a location to photograph?
Yeah.
And let's for the sake of simplicity, let's assume it's a new spot that I haven't been to, right?
Right.
Let's say that's a great question, right? So I think I'm sure like every photographer have their own protocol, I mean set of steps that they follow. For me, of course, right, it starts with the Google search about planning a trip. Let's say let's choose a spot, for example, maybe Banff Jasper National Park, Yosemite National Park. Let's make it simple, in California, right? So, it kind of, I think, starts with, landscape photography in Yosemite National Park. Simple Google search, for example, right? And then I'm sure there is a few blogs that, pop up, and, I kind of pick a blog, if a photograph, look good, I read the blog to understand if there is anything to know, anything not to do, and stuff like that, right? So that is one thing you do. And then Flickr and 500px, which is almost dead. I don't know. I think it's still active, but not a lot of photographers are there in that. So those two play websites, right? They allow location tagging, and those
Right.
were websites, dedicated for photography. And you could actually sort those photos by popularity, or how good they are and stuff, right? So you can look at what a good photograph in that place looks like, right?
Right.
uh, so that is something I used to do. I do, but now, since not a lot of photographers are active, most of them are active in Instagram, right? Probably you're going to build an alternative. Let's hope it it becomes as big, so that way, it might be nice. It's a good tool for photographers. Instagram, I mean, there is a lot of photographs, so it's very hard to kind of isolate the
Right.
best from a location, right?
Right.
So that's why I'm picking 500px and Flickr, because of a lack of alternative right now. And look at good photographs there. And also, I also follow a lot of travel photographers. So I constantly look at their feed, and I also bookmark them whenever I see a really good photograph, right? I kind of bookmark them. I kind of sort them into places. There'll be an album for Yosemite, there'll be an album for Iceland, and so on.
Right.
So kind of I put them in those buckets. So I know when I have to go there, whenever I go there, I can look at those photographs for inspiration, right? So I do that. Definitely that helps a lot. And then I think, but I don't do like one thing I do not want to do or do not do is, like, okay, I want to take exactly the same photo, because what happens is it takes up a lot of your mental resource. See, with nature, it is so dynamic, right? It is never the same. It changes in 10 minutes, right?
Right. Right.
So you cannot replicate a photo that you have seen exactly as it is. You never know. So be open-minded, right? That is something
Yeah.
I really want to emphasize, because I think that open-mindedness opens up a lot of opportunities to you. So people will say, okay, you cannot. There is no way now you can take a unique photo in Yosemite, or there's no way you can take a unique photo in San Francisco, for example, of a unique composition in Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
I don't think it's true. I think it is a lot of times. I think we kind of tend to imitate compositions and tend to, to so that I think being
Right.
open-mindedness really helps you come up with compositions, right? So, but and then on that note, I also want to mention that okay, if you are starting out as a landscape photographer or travel photographer or in any genre of photography, uh, it's okay to shamelessly copy a photograph that you've seen. It's absolutely fine. I'm not saying always
Yeah.
try to find original compositions or start with original compositions. No, start with copying. It's fine.
Right.
Okay, uh, but eventually pick up your own style,
Yeah.
right? Take a photo, choose something that appeals to you. You don't have to imitate anyone.
Yeah.
And anybody that imitates, right, they do not go on to become, genre benders, right? They are one in a lot.
Yeah.
But if you are unique, right, if you have a unique style, then you really stand out. I think
Right.
you can talk about a lot of examples, landscape photography or be it in wedding photography. All these were crowded spaces, but there were photographers who were able to, uniquely express
Right.
themselves,
I think
right?
that's nicely put. In fact, this is sort of like in stages, right? Like when you're starting out, it helps to imitate somebody. It helps to copy somebody you look up
Absolutely
to, right? And then eventually you evolve into your own style. So
correct.
no, it's I think it's unfair to like point at somebody saying that hey, you copied somebody. Maybe they're at a different stage, right? Uh,
Exactly. Well, most of us are techies. I'm sure, like a lot of people who want to watch this are maybe also techies, right? It's like this, right? So, some people, like Mark Zuckerberg or somebody, they might have that flair to, without working in a company, they might be able to start a company on their own. Start Bill Gates, for example. But a lot of people who have founded successful startups, they work for other companies. They kind of learned the trade from working in these companies under some
right.
great minds, and then they were able to get an idea, and then they branched out and created their own companies, which went on to become really successful ones. I think same to me, photography is also very similar. If you might have a flair to just shine on your own without copying anyone right from the outset, right?
Right.
Right from the
Right.
moment you picked up a camera, great, go for it. But that doesn't mean that copying somebody or imitating somebody's style and then branching out is bad. No, it's not. At the end of the day,
Right.
if you're able to uniquely express themselves, yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm just
No, no. So my question is, how do you evolve from imitation to your own style? Is there any are there any recipes for this, or is this just something like that happens by luck? What do you think? Should how do we get from that first stage into like develop? How do you develop your own style?
um, excellent question, Somi. So let's see, right? Um, I don't think that I don't think there is a formula for that, right? I think it comes purely out of, I think again, I think it goes back to your curiosity, what emotionally appeals to you, I think, right? Um, so let's say there may be thousands of photographers who have shot Yosemite, but there may be some lake in your own backyard. There is a small hill in your own backyard, for example, that nobody has shot, right? And you might have a lot of emotional connect to that place because you probably grow up there, right? Go explore that place, right? So any place, I think anything that has an emotional appeal to you, right? I think that you might come up with some really unique compositions from that place. Uh, I mean, sorry, I don't want to kind of, I don't mean to show off or anything, but if I have a lot of, I grew up in a small town called Ambasamudram, in Tamil Nadu, is in south of Tamil Nadu. I have a lot of emotional connect to that place because I grew up there. And I have a lot of memories from that place, right? So I genuinely, when I get excited when I go visit my hometown. My parents still live there, so I tend to shoot a lot in my place. It's a place where I'm so connected to. Okay, uh, so then naturally something there is something about that photos probably. I mean, I don't. In fact, when I started shooting in Amazandram, right, whenever I go visit India, right, it is not. I didn't. I mean, I like that place. I just have absolute attachment to the place. So I think the photos probably will carry a little bit of those emotions in them. It will be translated in the photos you take as well, I think. So because of lack of better example, I'm sorry, I'm quoting my own photos, I'm very sorry for that. But yeah, I want to, yeah, if you see the donkey herder photo or the one before that, a lot of these photos are from India or from Ambasamudram. Yeah, this one, the next one is also from Ambasamudram.
Yeah,
Yeah, this again, everything, all these are from.
these are so beautiful. Like this one, it's so simple. This is, you asked me to give you an example of simplicity, right? This is an example here. It's just a leaf. It's just a little plant, but
Right.
somehow you managed to create depth, feeling. So, so for example, like how do you land on this photo? That's sort of what I'm trying to gather.
Okay, so okay, so let me start by just saying one thing is I love mist swabbing. Mist has a lot of I don't know. I mean, I'm enamored by misty conditions. Okay, um, I don't know why. I think it's always been like that. So whenever there is misty conditions, I love getting out and take photos. So this is, by the way, by a place called Manjolai in near my native. Um, it's a small hill station. You know, my town is in the foothills of a mountain, Western Ghats, and this is kind of 20 kilometers up. Well, it's misty a lot of times. So one thing is, yeah, I like mist. Okay, so to start, and second thing, let's see. There is definitely, okay. So I think I earlier talked about a grammar of landscape photo where I talked about the foreground, midground, and the
Right.
background, right?
Layering.
If you
Yeah.
see here, yeah, these may not be like a dramatic background like a snow-capped mountain like Himalayas or the Karakorams. This may not be the Baikal Lake, in between,
Right.
or some really characteristic, notable lake. But there is if you see, there is a grammar to it, right? There is
Right.
a there's a foreground, which is the leaf, and there is a background which is a small puddle lake, and then a tree which is kind of shrouded in mist. But you can see them, you can make out that there is a background there, right?
Yeah.
I think that so there is a shot there, but just that there is a lot of chaos around it, and definitely, in my opinion, for me, it comes by practice. Okay, I probably 10 years ago I wouldn't have taken this photo. Okay, so
And
hang in
this
there,
is not a
hang in.
planned shot, right? This is just something
Absolutely not.
spontaneous. Yeah.
Absolutely not at all. Not at all. No way. You can plan a place like this or a shot like this.
Yeah.
It's
What
like
about
this
the
place.
mist? Do you have ways of knowing when it's going to be misty?
Uh, well, I think in mountains, whenever there is going to be rain, there is going to be mist. Okay, in mountain, there's always going to be the case, right? And after a rainy day, wet day, if the next day is going to be sunny, all the water is going to evaporate, and there is going to be a lot of mist as well, right? So there is, the thing. Those are certain things you can always predict. In monsoon season in India, there is going to be crazy amount of mist in the mountains. And there are some mountains, see, not all the places have mist, right? I mean, you have to know which kind of places have mist in them and which places do not, right? There are some
Right.
mountains which don't carry mist. So you kind of have to know them as well. But again, right, if you like mist, yes, you can have your field day. But like, I think all of us have our unique tastes and likes, right? I know photographers who love deserts, right?
Yeah.
They come up with some amazing compositions in the desert, but deserts, like hot weather, doesn't appeal to me as much. So, I find my expression in more rainy days and misty days, or snowy days, kind of, so I think that's where I was trying to say, find what you like. It uh, it could be it could be a very simple subject. Remember this travel photographer who became extremely famous by she would take a selfie of leading her boyfriend into a new location. So there'll be this background like a Taj Mahal, or leaning tower of Pisa, something like that. She would be in the foreground. She would be in the foreground, and then she's holding her boyfriend's hand or something like that. She became really famous. All her photos are exactly that. I mean, these I'm not. All I'm saying is, it's very unique, and she became
Yeah.
very, very popular. Right? It is her way of doing things. It's not like grammatically great compositions, or nothing really great about the
Right.
composers, but it was a style. So
Yeah.
I think you will identify your style. I think at some point, everybody gets this aha moment, right? You don't have to don't be impatient, is what I would say, right? I think your ideas, right? There may be like startups, right?
Right.
We can have 10 failed startups, and then you will get this aha moment, and you might just click, right? I think the same thing applies in photography. I think
Right.
patience is key in everything. You will find your expression at some point, but be patient. It's okay. If you don't get it, it's okay. Be patient. You can still keep producing a lot of good art.
Yeah. And in landscape photography, I think it's quite common that you would go to a particular location many times and fail to get the kind of photo that you want, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is very, very common. Okay, and it's not like, in fact, I would say, aim for one excellent photo every year. I think that itself is great to build a portfolio. It's okay if you're in your lifetime if there are 25 photos that
Right.
talks about you, right?
Right.
In fact, if you look at even one of the greatest landscape photographer, Ansel Adams, right? You will recollect probably 5 photos,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I think that's enough, and
Yeah.
that can speak volumes about you. It just make sure it is something. I mean, yeah. So
Everything
don't
else
be
you do counts as practice.
yeah, exactly. And you don't have to look for one of like photos every day, every single time you go on a trip, right? I have to get a photo, I have to get a photo. No. So I think it doesn't work that way. I think art is about I think let nature dictate what is a good day and what is not.
Right.
It's
Right.
fine, it's fine. And I think it's very important, all the more important, that I think we soak ourselves in nature, appreciate it for what it is, accept its dynamism, accept its flaws, accept its strengths, and when the time is right, you will have a great photo. I think it's very important to fully immerse yourself in nature and experience first, and then let photo become a byproduct of that.
In India, right? A lot of photographers I've seen are into wildlife, and weddings, but there are very few. Uh, at least I haven't come across a lot of landscape photographers in India, except for you. Is that? Do you know
Mm,
why that could be, or am I just not seeing in the right place?
I think, yeah, I thought about it as well, so a lot as well. I think one thing is, I could be right, is the monetary angle to it, right? Wedding photography brings a lot of revenue, and
Mm,
people who are becoming photographers, right? They are trying to break away from the norm of engineering or whatever field
right.
they've been forced into, right? And then they are finding their own expressions, right? I think that's so they know that they like photography,
Yeah.
and the only way they can make money in photography, or the easier way to make money in photography, happens to be weddings, right? uh, that could be a reason, in my opinion. Another reason could be, again, growing up in, most of these people, we didn't grow up amidst a lot of nature. uh,
We were in concrete
so
jungles mostly.
what is that?
We were in concrete jungles mostly, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, right. So nature is not something that they are exposed to as much,
Yeah.
right? So getting that inspiration takes time, right? You spend time with nature, I think you kind of decide, oh, you know what, this is where I want to be,
Which is a
or
little bit
this is where I
ironic
want.
because India has so much of uh, nature just outside the cities, right?
It is true, but yeah, it is definitely true. But again, access to those places, like for example, like like outside, if you see, if you, I don't know how, it depends how you define nature, right? There are a lot of farmlands, for example, every outside
Yeah.
of a city, if you go, you meet like a lot of farmlands. But if you want to see a snow-capped mountain, or
Right.
if you want to get into a dense jungle, kind of that kind of nature, it's still a bit of work for people,
Yeah.
right? So that could be a reason, in my opinion, right? It's not as accessible as what I feel. Traveling in India to far off places, it's still it's getting a lot better, but there is still some challenges. like Ladakh, for example. It's just mind blowing how beautiful the place is. Mind blowing, right? Uttarakhand are like the reaches, upper reaches of Himalayas, right? There's
Right.
a lot of beautiful places over there, but they are not as easy to access. Like Northeast India, it's still a big challenge to reach. To fly to. You have to fly to Guwahati, and then from there you have to take some really bad roads to go to Mizoram or Arunachal Pradesh and things like that. So there are still challenges to kind of reach that kind of places. That's why I'm saying, it might be nice to explore your own backyard in your own area to understand where your inspiration is.
What is your advice to
Yeah.
photographers from India who wants to experiment with landscape photography? What would you tell them? Like, you have been a pretty, if I can say, successful with your landscape photography work in Ambasundaram and India and Sri Lanka, that kind of landscape, right? And you're able to find really interesting scenes and subjects and mist and just people and the culture. What should new photographers in India looking to get into landscape photography, what's your advice to them?
So yeah, I think my first advice would be, I think as you rightly said, right, there is definitely a lot of nature in India. Okay, I think a lot of landscape photographers, I think one big mistake they do is they look at most of these photographs tend to come from either the Americas or it comes from the Alps. There's a lot of nature photography that comes. You see a lot of landscape photographs out there, and a lot of people I think can wrongly assume that, oh, we need this beautiful place like Yosemite, or we need this beautiful place like a Banff National Park, or the Alps, Switzerland, right? To be able to take a good landscape photo, right? I think that itself closes your options, right? So I think it again goes back to being open-minded, right?
Yeah.
Uh, be very open to, uh, be open-minded, right? In fact, look at that as an opportunity rather than as a challenge. Oh, you should not say that, oh, I don't have a Yosemite in my backyard, I don't have a Iceland in my backyard. I can't afford to travel to those places also, right? Rather look at that as an opportunity to think that, oh, India is still unexplored. Oh, especially South India, no one has seen this place. I am the first guy to go and explore this place, right? So look at that in that way, right? If you change your perspective, the world changes,
Right. Right.
right?
What about in terms of gear? Like somebody who might just be starting out. What gear should they get?
Okay, so I think the full frame cameras are one of those things I would really suggest. And full frame cameras have become extremely affordable compared to 10 years ago,
In
right?
the
You
beginning,
get
like,
a
you think they should get a full frame camera right at the start?
Okay, yeah, I'll tell you why. Okay, so full frame cameras, like the wide angle lenses, right? I think I talked a little about in landscape photography how the wide angle perspective is so different for it makes a very unique compo in for landscapes. That's one thing I would say. I mean, see, it's not like you cannot take landscape photos without a lot of photographers have done that without a full frame camera. It's not impossible. It's definitely doable, but I want to. I mean, since eventually they will have to do that. Is what I'm saying. It
Right.
does make a good difference. The quality of photos that comes out of it. At the end of the day, right? Your pixels. Basically, if you have a smaller sensor of 35 pixels and a larger sensor with 35 pixels, the quality of light that goes into each pixel makes a
Right.
big difference,
Right.
right? The amount of leeway you get, to work in the post processing in Lightroom or Photoshop, right? There is a difference.
Right.
So I must say that, right? I mean, it's like at the end of the day, okay. So though we may all say that, oh, it's all about photographer, right?
Yeah.
Let's give credit to these amazing people who are working in the technology behind
Yeah.
it, right?
Right.
I mean, they are amazing people. There's so
Right.
many academicians, right?
Right.
Academics are working on it, engineers working on it, right? So they are doing a great job, and there is a difference,
Yeah.
right?
So what do you
Uh,
think? What do you think they should get first? Just a wide angle lens.
uh, like a question. Um, I would say go for an all-round walk-around lens between like a 24 to a 105 or 120 right? I think that will be a great start, and those are really affordable. right?
Mm.
And eventually also study a lot of photographers, who inspire you, and then find out what exactly they are doing, right? I want to talk about an example, Swami. Like, I think you have a photo of, I think a small one, like a lot of trees covered in snow and just one tree not covered in snow, for example, right? It's because this photo was shot at 400 This is no way a landscape, wide angle lens, right?
Right.
400 people use that for bird photography and wildlife photography, right? So
Yeah.
I shot a lot of photos at 400 landscape photos at 400 because this is I mean this is, it's something that really appealed to me. It really, like, it was so many trees, and this one tree which didn't have snow in it, right? So you can, what I'm trying to say through this is, you can find a landscape photo in any focal length. It doesn't have to be a wide angle, right?
Right.
So if you tend to see yourself liking a lot of photos which are taken with really wide angle, yes, go for them, but they tend to be expensive still, unfortunately.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know why, but I mean, probably the physics of making those lenses might be more expensive. Optics are probably harder to achieve. That could be a reason, but they tend to be expensive. So it doesn't have to be a wide angle. Find your expression in whatever lens you have, and if you don't see yourself liking it, or you want to eventually grow into something else, then eventually go for it. It's okay. Whatever lens you can get, right? There is still a lot of photos you can make with it, and to be very honest, right? Adobe also has gone through amazing, huge strides in the last few years, right? Uh, you can shoot in RAW. So yeah, that's a minimum I would recommend to anybody
Mm.
who's starting out landscape. Understand what a RAW photography means, and all, and shoot it. It's nothing. It's not rocket science. It's just one format, and you can edit them in any photo editing software. Shoot in RAW, and then there is so much leeway you get in Photoshop or Lightroom, or any other post processing software that you use to edit those photos as well. So it's okay if you don't have an expensive camera and an expensive lens. It's absolutely fine. In landscape photography, it's very forgiving
Yeah.
compared to a portrait lens, right? A
What do you
portrait
think?
lens taken.
What do you think
Sorry.
about the whole mobile camera revolution? How is that impacting landscape photographers?
Uh, okay, so I think if you're a serious photographer, you do not use your mobile phone cameras for serious photography for sure, but they're very helpful in kind of quickly scanning through a place and getting some photos to understand where the best compositions could be. Right?
Hmm.
In that respect, it's making a huge difference, right?
Right.
I go to a spot, right? You walk around, you just take some photos, just take a few photos, and then you know what is good and what is not good to kind of right,
Right.
you don't
Right.
want to spend, yeah, that aspect, I think it's separating, it's very helpful. But if you're very serious into photography, I don't think there is a reason why these cameras are so expensive, and there is a lot of engineering and optics that goes
Right.
into physics that goes into making good cameras. So I wouldn't recommend just sticking to a mobile phone and then trying to become a serious photographer. No,
Right.
I don't think I belong to that school of thought yet. At least not yet.
Yeah. Let's talk about this photo, right? Like, how did this photo happen? This is not a planned shot as well, I'm guessing.
No, not at all. So
Yeah.
this was in Fairbanks, Alaska. We were we went there for to shoot Northern Lights, hoping to get Northern Lights basically in the month of November, during Thanksgiving in the US, which is end of November for people in India. So yeah, we were, the trip was kind of over, and then we were coming, basically driving back, and then it was like really far off. That I kind of noticed this one tree which didn't have snow in it, right? And that's it. I mean, so basically, it stood out. It has I felt it had a story,
Yeah.
right? And that's what in fact, I titled this photo also. I think in this, I think stand out as something is what I think I
Yeah. You
titled
come
it.
up with really interesting captions as well.
I think the photos tell you that caption, right? So,
Yeah.
that's what I feel. If the photos don't tell you a caption, I think I leave it blank, or I come up with some crappy titles anyway. So anyway, so what I'm trying to say is, yeah, I think that it had a story. So so immediately, I mean, I knew it was like really far off. The only way I could do it was with a telephoto lens. So, but it did. I kind of have a liking for this photo personally. For I think because it has this unique, standout kind of a story. Um,
Let me
so
pause
what
you.
I'm
Let me pause you there just a second.
mm,
So now
mm,
that you mentioned story,
mm,
so it seems like the challenge in photography of telling stories is you have only one frame to tell a story, rather than if you're making a movie you have 2 hours, and if
mm,
you're writing a book you have 200 pages. But in
mm,
photography we have one frame to tell a story, right? And it
mm.
looks like a lot of your photos, you're looking for oddities, looking for things that are standing out, things that are odd, and you're trying to create a story around that. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
It's not completely true all the time. It's more like okay. Let me just rephrase it. It's more than a story. It's more like something that appeals to me more. It's like, okay, there is something beautiful, there's something unique about it that has an emotional connect. You kind of that's what I
Mm.
look for when you are especially trying to find original compositions, right?
Mm.
Being open-minded and then trying find something that appeals. That is what I feel is my style. I'm not looking for a
Got it.
story all the time.
Right. So when you're driving around, you're sort of looking around for opportunities, things that appeal to you. Just
Correct,
yeah.
correct.
Mm.
Yeah, constantly scanning and looking for something that appeals, right? Uh, so in fact, that's why. So otherwise, right? If you're so you just let's take this example, right? You are, I haven't seen Northern Lights in my life at all, right? I'm going to shoot Northern Lights in Alaska, and Northern Lights is something so unique and so beautiful, right? You Unless you are really open-minded, you won't see a shot here, right? That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying, emphasizing on being open-minded and shoot whatever appeals to you. And what if Northern Lights never show up? What if the entire 4 days are washed out because of clouds? You won't come up with a single photo then, the entire trip,
Right. Right.
right? I
Yeah.
think that's why I think it's very important to be open-minded, right? You go plan a sunrise, plan a sunrise shoot in Yosemite, for example, or any place, right? And then you don't fix your mind on, don't get fixated upon getting this one shot. Oh, I want to get this really beautiful colors in the foreground of Yosemite's valley view, or
Mm.
whatever, right? I want mist. Don't be too fixed on what you want from that trip,
Right.
right? Nature doesn't give that to you.
Right.
It's not
Right.
it's not our slave, it's our master.
Actually, I have two questions to
So
ask you about that. um,
okay.
First is there, what do you think is the main obstacle to being open-minded? Why is it difficult to be open-minded for a lot of us, you think?
I think I don't know. Okay, so let me think through it. Right, let's think loudly through it together. I,
Sure.
I feel social media pressure could be a factor, Swami. Right.
Mm.
So let's say you see so many good photographs out of from a location, like Iceland, for example, right? And you want to take an equally good photo and show to the media, show to the social world, right?
Right.
uh, and okay, so this is a photo taken by a really famous photographer, like Max Rive, or one of Mark Adamus, really big names, right? And you want to take a photo like that. We know that those photos became very viral, very popular. Now you want to create something as popular as that, right?
Right.
uh, and you know that by replicating that composition as similar photo, you might get equally good attention, right? I think that could be. I feel that that little pressure within you to impress a community, the social media community, right? Uh, I feel plays a major role. I think it adversely affects. I think social media has its huge benefits, no doubt. You can
Right.
reach the entire world
Right.
at the click of a button. At the same time, I think it also I feel it has an adverse effect as well. It's one of the reasons I'm thinking. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And that it sort of ties into my next question. It's like, we have all these poster shots in mind, and we go to these locations to try and get that poster shot, or the money shot. But then, as you said, nature is very unpredictable, and you have to have an open mind. So how do you balance this desire to get these poster shots and being open-minded and getting these spontaneous shots? Because let's face it, sometimes you're driving 3-4 hours to a location and you don't have the luxury to it, we are human beings. We want, we go to a place, we want to get something from there. So how do you balance this conflicting feelings?
Okay, so I think one thing, right, Swami, you can do is definitely do a lot more homework. Okay,
Hmm.
uh, in the sense that let's say you're driving 3-4 hours to a place, right? Um, Look for I mean, I'm sure, like you as a photographer, you also know that weather is very important factor, right? If you know that it's a sunny day, right, you cannot
Hmm.
expect a good shot that day.
Right.
Okay, so definitely follow the weatherman, right? If the
Hmm.
weatherman says the weather is good, it's a bad day for you, for a
Right.
photographer. If
Right.
the weatherman says sit inside the house, you go out as a photographer,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So that's at least a basic homework that you can do if you're
Right.
really looking
Right.
for that money shot or something, right?
Right.
Uh, that's one thing you can. It's a minimum you can do, and also definitely if you are looking for some standard photos and stuff, right? Do your homework in terms of looking at other photos, right? Look at other compositions. See, you
Hmm.
cannot, in my opinion, right? You cannot, I think, go to a location for the first time and get that exact composition that other photographers, because landscape photo compositions, right? It could be the foreground is like completely unnoticeable. It could be some
Hmm.
one small twig the
Right.
photographer might have used as a foreground, and that would have just blown people away.
Right.
How
Right.
do you search for a twig in a forest, man? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
not possible, right? It's like that, right? So you need to spend time. You need to be prepared to spend time. So I think that's where patience comes into virtual. It's of
Yeah.
high importance too. The compositions may not always scream in front of you. You have to do a lot of work. You have to be prepared to walk, prepared to hike. Have that. That's what, right? It's open-mindedness in terms of everything. Accept nature as it is. And be patient.
Right.
Yeah, you will get that. You will get it. See, what I'm trying to say is, like, if you're trying to be uh, fixed on some compositions, right? That might be another, much easy. Like, if you're looking for the $1 million shot, that might be $1 billion shot behind you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might miss it out
Right.
if you just fix on your mind, on that one particular shot. Uh,
I think
so
the key is be open minded.
I think, yeah,
Right.
that's what I
Yeah.
feel. You don't go for a composition, right? Don't go for that one composition, right? You are going to spend time with nature, and as a byproduct, you'll get some photos.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
think that's so. And one thing, another thing, Somi, I realize is, right. As soon as you go to a spot, right, you set out, you take your tripod out, and then you kind of go, say, set yourself up in a in a particular spot, along with a lot of photographers who are already there. uh, you will get a shot which all the other photographers are getting, isn't it, Swami? So
Correct. Yeah.
that's something I'm sure you also have noticed a lot, over here in the US, right? Uh, Not don't do that. If you want to really uniquely, express yourself in the world of landscape photography, don't do that. Right?
Hmm.
Spend time. Go to a spot where nobody is there. You might find something, right? You don't know. Uh, there are opportunities everywhere, even in Yosemite Valley, right? There is still thousands of compositions that have not been taken.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
you don't have to just go and shoot the firefalls all the time. You don't have to
Right.
just go and shoot the valley view all the time or the
Yeah.
tunnel view all the time. That is that's what I feel. Uh, Nature has, I think, infinite opportunities for you to express yourselves. I think that's still
No, that
possible.
is very well said, actually. And
Yeah.
let's get back into the story of that snow shot. So we were saying that you found this little tree that is a little different, and you felt like there was a story around this. So now you found this thing. What next? What do you know? What do you do next?
Yeah. So you okay. So when you look at a location, right? I think you kind of. So I think that comes by practice, right? You know exactly what focal length you want, right? Okay, this photo is going to be appealing in a with 16 mm, or if this photo is going to be more appealing at 50 mm, or 135 mm, or 200 mm. So I think that's something that you definitely get by practice. Yeah. At the end of the day, anything, be it art, be it science, I think deliberate practice is important as well,
True.
right?
Yeah.
You cannot become an overnight great photographer. Not everybody, maybe there are some exceptions in the world, but
Right.
not all of us are capable of that, right? And deliberate practice will get you there.
Yeah.
Absolutely, will get you there. Okay, the growth mindset,
Right. So it's a
uh,
mixture of practice and open-mindedness. And
correct.
what about education? Like, do you think it's important to like read up some fundamentals?
Okay, yes, I think so. Okay, so photography is as much about science and technology as much as it's about art, Swami, right? So
Hmm.
get the tech part of it out of your way as soon as possible. Know your camera, know your lenses, know the settings by heart,
Hmm.
right? That is something that you should know at the back of your hand, right? Like, you
Hmm.
have to get it out of your way soon, really soon, right? Because a lot of people, a lot of us are, technically good, capable of understanding it. Get it out of the way, right? That's one
Right.
thing I would say. And from the art perspective, yes, there are certain basic compositional rules, of course, out there, and I think it's so easy to access them these days. Just watch a YouTube video, right?
Right.
That definitely is there. And after that, right, you have to deliberately practice it. Like, not all leading lines are the same,
Right.
right? That could
Right.
be one leading line, which one composition of a leading line which is much more appealing compared to something else, right?
Yeah.
A leading line taken at 16 mm in a particular place might not look as appealing as a leading line taken at 35 mm in a particular place, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of nuances there, right? And
Right.
that comes by practice. You cannot just say that, okay, all leading lines are going to look good, or
Right.
all one-third compositions are look good. No, it's not the case,
Yeah.
right?
Is there any method to the madness with leading lines? Are there any recommended practices when working? You have a lot of leading lines in your pictures, a lot of them, roads and curves and right. So, any recommendations there, or do
Okay.
you just be open-minded again?
Okay, so let me. Okay, I think I've overused the word open-minded, right?
Well,
Possible.
yeah,
I'll do it this way. Okay, what is important deserves repetition, so I
exactly.
think I kept
Yeah.
repeating that. But let me not overdo it again. Right. Okay, so go back to a few things, right? Again, a bit philosophical, but be self-critical. Okay, I want to. Okay, so I may not be directly answering this question, but I'll eventually lead to the answer. Let me start by saying that um, initial days when you're taking photos, right, you're posting it in social media. Do post in social media, right? Do post it among your friends and families, right? they they kind of will, that is a good way of judging your photos. Okay,
Yeah.
let's say you have 10 leading line photos from a spot, right? If you do not know what is good, if you think, because see, all of us say, unfortunately, in art, right, there is no quantitative way to evaluate an art, unlike in mathematics or science, right, where you have
Yeah.
a examination to test you, right? We don't have that in art, right? So everyone, all of us, right, we tend to believe that we are great artists. The moment you take
Right.
a camera and then take a photo, you would believe that, yes, I have become a photographer, right?
Right.
And you want to write cool things about you and all that stuff, right? It's understandable why, right? But while it's important that you have that self-confidence in you in the field of art, which is very, very important, also be self-critical. Okay, so you post it in social media. You get motivated by people who are saying nice things about your photos, which is going to, which acts as a good positive feedback loop, right? That's very, very important. But at the same time, be self-critical. Okay, these are photos which people seem to like. These are photos taken by me in the same spot, but people don't seem to like it, or there is not as much positive feedback for this photo, right? There has to be a reason, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
neutral audience, right? You like all the photos equally, the
Right.
photographer as a creator. So kind of use that as a feedback loop, right? You may not, because one thing, right? Swami, I think as you mentioned in the beginning, not a lot of photographers are accessible, especially for giving feedback to your photos if you are a starter.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you have to, and it was much harder in the early days to get that feedback, right? You would
Yeah.
post a photo on Flickr and nobody comments. You don't know what is happening, right? Am I taking a bad
Right.
photo? Am I really bad, or nobody is looking at my photo, right? But social media, at least now we have friends and families who give you that feedback. They may not be able to
Right.
give a good technical feedback,
Yeah.
but they'll still, you'll get more likes for a good photo, better
Right.
photo.
Right.
That itself can be used as a tool, in my opinion, Swami, in the early days, right?
Yeah.
Eventually you can, once you get enough practice, you can break out of this comfort zone of your friends and family. You can post it in the social media world, like Instagram or anything, right? There people might be more open, or are more critical and stuff. But what I'm trying to say is, right, you have to be self-critical and you have to be self-evaluative all the time, and that is one, you have to do it deliberately to improve on that, right?
Yes.
So what is the original question? So I wanted to come back, connect to that eventually. I forgot the original question.
What was the original question?
Oh, okay, that's okay. Never mind. I think I think we're just going with the flow right
Yeah,
now.
what was
Nice.
the original question actually? Being self-critical is important, and then posting your pictures to family and friends is also important. In fact, that gives you a lot of confidence, because a lot of them give
Lot of
you,
confidence.
right, they
Yes,
give you a lot of positive feedback. Mostly
exactly.
it's in fact almost 100% positive feedback. But I think
I
you
think it's
have to sort
important
of
because
evolve out of that, right, where you can get some
exactly,
critique, negative feedback,
correct.
constructive feedback as well.
Exactly. So I think in your journey, right? I think it's initially you just like something, right? You like photography, right? You just take photos because you don't even know what world you are getting into, right? You just like photography, you take photos and then you go into it. I think at that point, although you don't know a lot about it, you still need that positive feedback. I think
Yeah.
and that I think it's the beginning of your journey where you that positive feedback really motivates you to take more photos. And naturally, when you take more photos, you are becoming better at it,
Right.
right? But the point where I think the inflection point is where you decide that, okay, well, then I'm going to go out of my comfort zone into the world out there. This huge world of art where people may not be nice, people may not even notice you for a long time.
Right.
At that point, I think that is the stage where you really need to be self-motivated. Yes, you have got enough motivation from your well-wishers. Now you have to be self-motivated because this world is not, looking for your photo. It's not
Right.
waiting for your
Right.
photo,
Right.
right? They have so
Yeah.
much noise out there. You just one of the dots.
On the note about self-critiquing, self-awareness. Sometimes I found that when you're editing your own photo, when you're editing your photo, sometimes it goes on for hours and sometimes even days, and then you get too close to it, and then I find that I lose a sense of judgment. It's sort of like I sometimes when we're making music, you have to give a like a 2-day pause, come back to it, and then, oh, what was I thinking? You know,
Correct.
do you experience that, and how do you deal with it?
Absolutely, Swami. I think it's a fantastic question, Swami. In fact, I think only a photographer can ask this kind of question, right? Great. So let's do this. Let's go through this, Swami. So I come, I go. Let's say you go on a trip, right? You come back with a lot of photos, and let's say 500 photos, right? Out of which maybe 10 photos might be, good. And maybe one photo is very good,
Hmm.
right? Be brutal, okay?
Hmm.
Because there is no way in this digital world, in this day and age, you can get to process 500 photos. Even if you're a full-time photographer, you don't want to waste your time sitting in front of the computer editing 500 photos.
Right.
So go through. I think, as I say, right, your intuition, whatever comes to your mind immediately is probably what is right. If you think about
Right.
it, like for 1 hour, you'll eventually come back to that, that decision you made within a second, right?
Right.
I
Right.
think I think it's very I think it applies to photography also. You have 500 photos, right? You will go through it, scan through it quickly in Lightroom or whatever post processing software, right? Reject, 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 reject. Go for a reject. Most of
Right.
the photos that are immediately. If there is something in that photo, yes, I mean, I'm sure, like, since you must be familiar with Lightroom, right?
Yeah.
You have this rating, you have 1 to 5. You can give a
Right.
1 star to 5 star, right?
Hmm.
Just rate it from 1 star to 5. Any 2 stars, just reject it, right? Anything you think is less than 2 stars, just keep rejecting
Hmm.
it. Okay, if you think something is going to be good, uh, you know, what, go through one scan of it, and then you might come up with some, let's say, 50 photos, right? And then go through a second scan, and then come up with 20 photos
Hmm.
max. It's enough. It's really enough, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Again, right, it again comes down to being extremely critical about
Right.
yourself,
Right.
right? Don't have an emotional, see, okay, so you are a photographer when you are clicking a photo, okay? And when you are looking at your photo, after coming back home, you are a critic and you are not a photographer anymore. Don't
Right.
be attached. Don't be emotionally attached to your photo. Okay, I think your job is done when you click the photo,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
especially during the the shortlisting process, you have to be a critic and not a photographer.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay, and then during the processing time, you become a photographer again. I think that's kind of what I do.
Yeah. It's
Um,
a psychology, right? In a lot of ways.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Because if you shortlist 500 photos, if you're looking at 500 photos from a trip, and then you're trying to decide what is good and what is not. I mean, if you like all the photos emotionally, that's like, there's no way you'll eventually even get to it, right?
And especially if you put in a lot of effort to take some of those shots,
Exactly,
it's difficult.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It goes back to some music directors, right? That I follow a lot, like in Tamil, Ilayaraja, A.R. Rahman, right? They say sometimes, right, some of their best songs have come in like 15 minutes or 30 minutes. They would have composed a song. Some of their all-time best songs. But there
Yeah.
are some songs which they've taken for days to compose, but they may be very ordinary, right? It's something like that, I think.
Yep.
Some of your best shots are so impulsive. Like, you see a photo, yes, I'm going to take that photo. That might be one of your best photos
Right. Right.
ever.
Shankar, so landscape photographers often associate landscape photography with wide-angle photography, and this is something that you also brought up earlier today. That one of the things is we have to train our eye to see beyond that natural eye focal length, right? Like being able to see things in wide angle. But what is your opinion about? Um, should landscape photography be limited only to wide angle perspectives? Can you maybe share a little bit about that?
Okay. So yeah, so my answer is no. Yes, wide angle does bring a lot of unique compositions which your eyes normally don't see. So, which really is appealing. There's a lot of beautiful landscape photographs taken with wide angle lens, predominantly wide angle lens. But yes, there is a world beyond wide angle. And I really want to emphasize that, because that opens up a new world for you if you start to again look beyond the wide angle lenses. I think there is again a lot of things. I think earlier, as part of another question, I think I told you this. We shared this photo of snow, a lot of snow covered trees and one tree not covered in snow. I mentioned that it was taken at 400 mm, or something like that. Um, so it is possible, right? That's why I wanted to share another photo here, of this road in Alaska again. It was early winter in Alaska, and we were driving randomly in the morning somewhere, and the sun had, it was, since it's winter, thankfully the sun rises really really late. So it was probably at 11 in the morning or 10:30 in the morning where the sun rising, this long road. And I think that the snow had just started falling, or you know so this is again a, there's a photo taken at close to 400 mm. It was with a telephoto lens, typically used for animal photography, wildlife, or bird photography, right?
Right.
But I personally, really like this photo because I think of the leading line, one, a beautiful road, just going up and down,
Right. And the
and
colors.
uh, and the colors on the side, right?
Yeah.
The fall, it's kind of the sunrise colors hitting the trees, with some snow on the road, and this is one vehicle, in the cold Alaskan
Where were you
morning,
standing?
winter morning. So I was in the road. You can see
Okay.
from the, I was. So I mean, yeah, it's not like I recommend that, but you do. I think do some crazy things. I think as a photographer sometimes. Yeah, of course, assess your risk, right? If it's the middle of a highway, I wouldn't be doing that. I wouldn't be putting my life in risk. It is as you can see, it's an empty road with just one vehicle. He can clearly see me. There's no way he cannot see me. So yes, it was safe to do it, and there was nobody behind me. I definitely ensured that. A lot of times my wife does this job of telling me when I'm in some crazy locations, right? If I'm safe or not. So she's on the side, she has pulled over to the side, and she was watching me. Yeah, so I was literally waiting. I saw this vehicle from far. I actually waited for this vehicle to come to a spot where it will make a decent composition. Basically, I was waiting for that, and then that's it. I left the spot, and we were on our way.
Was
Yeah,
it
so
handheld or
this was
on the
not.
tripod?
What is that?
Were you on the tripod or was it handheld?
No, no. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic point that you brought about, right, Swami? That's mainly okay. I think photographers it's a big difference in photograph between photographers in US and in India. In US, landscape photography means you have to use a tripod, right?
Hmm.
I always, and they just go to a spot, set out their tripod, mount their camera, and then they start looking for a composition.
Yeah.
I think in India, I think the concept of tripod photography is not there. I don't think people use a lot of tripod. Most of the people use handheld. I
Hmm.
think I think finding a balance between the two is I feel the sweet spot is somewhere in between.
Right. Right.
Okay, you cannot you don't have the luxury to shoot tripod in all the locations, and also
Hmm.
having it at a tripod and then looking at I feel it limits your composition options
Yeah.
sometimes. I
Right.
think the handle gives you a liberty. It
True.
liberates you, in my
True.
opinion.
Yeah.
Right? And there are of course times where you have to use a tripod because the light is not enough.
Yeah.
Right?
In this
Or
case,
you
how did you achieve that balance in terms of low light and not having a tripod?
Actually, you know what? Honestly, Swami, I think I may have spoken. This might have been on a tripod. I'm sorry,
Okay.
because it's been a long time. I mean, it's been like 6 years. I might have shot it to the tripod, because I saw this composition. This composition definitely, was looking very beautiful to me.
Yeah.
Uh, the road, the whole contours of the road had amazing character along with the trees, with the light falling on the trees,
It's
right?
beautiful. Yeah.
It had a character, and so I think I might have used. I was looking at the sharpness of this photo. I might have used a tripod. Okay, I'm sorry, but there are other photos that I'll show which was completely shot handheld, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And this was
yeah.
at 400 mm, so I think it would have been a little bit difficult on.
Possibly, yeah,
Yeah.
especially early in the morning, right? The sun is
Yeah.
just rising, just about rising. It's still in the horizon.
Yeah.
It might have been with the tripod. Yeah, you're right. This might have been with the tripod. Yeah, I don't know what that guy in the truck would have thought about me, but anyways, because yeah. So yeah, I think I wanted to still emphasize, yeah, going back, telephotos, it is possible to do landscape photography with telephotos. Again, when I say landscape photography, it can be purely nature, also done with landscape. In this case, yes, there is a road, there is a car, and there is, I think, to the far of the photo or the left hand side, there is a building as well that you can see. This
Right.
doesn't technically come under pure landscape photography, but to me, it's still a photo that appealed to me. I shoot it out. That's all. And it was with the telephoto. Yeah, yeah. We can go to another photo that I wanted to show you. Where how the wide angle makes a huge difference. I think that the fall colored trees on the top.
Before we
I
go
wanted to.
there, Shankar, just one question.
Sure, sure.
This red color is where is that color coming from? Is it from the sunlight or is that how the trees?
Um, You know what, actually, Swami, God, no, I don't think it is just the sunlight. I think it is still remnants of some fall colored leaves that were hanging onto the trees, I think.
Got it. But
And
the
they
light
were
is
reflecting,
helping it out.
yeah, exactly. The light is definitely accentuating, it is definitely, intensifying the colors here
So,
for
so this is
sure.
right around right after sunrise.
This is right up, yeah, probably. See, in winter in Alaska, the sun stays in the horizon for the most part. So your entire day almost looks like golden hours to some extent
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
the sun never rises up, right? So I don't recall the exact time, but probably around 10:30, 11ish, I would say. Yeah. So may not be right around sunrise, but still it is still closer to the horizon. Sun is
Okay,
closer to the
and this
horizon.
is not a planned shot as well. This you were just driving here at that time, and you.
Yeah. Not at all planned. Yeah, we were driving
Hmm.
for something else. Yeah, I don't remember where, but yeah, it was just on our way. I just thought, oh wait, oh, what's happening here? Oh, there's a shot right here.
Did you have to
Right?
back
Yeah.
up a little bit?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
happens. It happens all the time because
Yeah.
you don't want to brake suddenly, right? My wife is used to it when she's driving, or and I'm screaming. She's used to it. So she slows down slowly, and then I either walk back to the location where I saw the composition. Because
Hmm.
I think it's like in places like this, right? Even a few feet makes a difference to the how the
Right.
photos comes, right? Yeah.
Right.
So you need to sometimes trace back.
Yeah.
It happens. Yeah, so this is a photo taken in the eastern Sierra mountain ranges, the Sierra mountain ranges in California. Um, this was taken with my walk around lens, which is 24 105 mm lens. And I wanted to again write this. I think through this photo also, I wanted to mainly emphasize the fact that if not every landscape photo has to be wide angle.
Right.
This was probably taken at around, I would say, the tree is not close to me. The foreground tree is definitely not close to me. So it was probably around 50 mm, I would say, from the looks of it.
Hmm.
And so again, it has, has a foreground, it has a midground, it has a background along with a reflection, and then the sunburst in it, right?
Yeah.
It has a few elements which I could include in this photo, which technically is a landscape photo, and it was not a wide angle. 50 mm is not a wide angle lens, right?
Right.
Yes, so you can find compositions is what I wanted to emphasize with this photo also.
Right. And you have some
And it was
natural
again
frame.
another thing I wanted to emphasize here is not every photo had to be taken in the golden hours or dramatic sunrises and sunsets.
Yeah.
This is not. You can clearly see the sun is above.
This looks like around
No,
9 a.m. or something.
around that time, correct?
Hmm.
Yes, and then it's not a cloudy day
Hmm.
as well, so you can do photos, even in the lack of the ideal conditions as well.
Yeah, and blue is a really good complement to yellow, so it really works well
Exactly,
here.
exactly.
Yeah. Hmm. And there's some natural framing going on here as well, right? And you use the leaves of the
Exactly.
tree. Yeah.
Exactly. So basically, yeah. So that again, that's where you kind of practice. You kind of know how where to kind of practice to deliberately practice to how to learn how to frame,
Hmm.
what to eliminate in this composition and what to include in this composition, right? So that's something you need to ask yourself every time you compose a photo. Right? This reflection, should I include more tree on the top? Should I cut down the lake in the bottom? How
Hmm.
much to the left do I tilt, how much to the right do I tilt, right?
Right.
Few basic questions to ask yourself, I think. Yeah.
Cool. And then you have this wide shot here that is somewhat similar to the previous one, but this is on the wide angle side.
Correct. Yeah. So this was in Colorado. These aspens have a very unique character in the sense that
Very
it has a
interesting.
yes, yeah. So they are like super bent, unlike most of the straight aspens that you see, right?
Hmm.
But if you follow like a lot of landscape photography, there are photos taken with this in this location, but none of them I've seen were actually wide. They were all taken with the emphasis mainly on the bent portion of the aspens,
Hmm.
and in the background you will see blurred yellow, trees basically.
Right.
Okay, but none of them are taken with this wide angle. So I think the wide angle I felt had a very interesting. So in fact I titled it Jurassic Park. They look like that. They look like dinosaurs to me. Okay.
Yeah.
The game it was this was shot with super wide, and I think they typically and as it the leading lines here, right? What I wanted to tell was again, this was not in the golden hours, though. Uh, you know, it was shooting straight into the sun. But when you're shooting straight into the sun, it can become very challenging because the contrast is so bad. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that you move around a bit so that the sun kind of goes into some really hidden spot with just a spark of light is coming out, and it's not ruining your other the general exposure of the photo.
Right.
So that's something you emphasize, you focus on. And also and it's extremely challenging in a wide angle to get the so to say the that foreground that looks appealing. They kind of, it has to lead you into the photo, lead the audience into the photo, but at the same time it should not what to say, it's not like, it should not be like so dominating that people, the audience just stay in the foreground.
Right. Right.
So that's where I kind of wanted to use this as a leading line.
Yeah. One point I wanted to make was that I think when you're starting out with photography, before you, like for example, in my own case, I used to just shoot at any time of the day, before I became a serious photographer, right? I wasn't aware of this whole golden hour thing and how to make use of good light and all of that. But I think, so would you say that, for people starting out, it's good to think about shooting in golden hour. It's good to think about how to shoot in wide angle,
Actually,
and then there comes a time when you sort of open up a little bit.
I think I'll agree with you, Swami. So the thing is about getting the positive reinforcement, right? If you go in a golden hour during the golden hours, since the light is so beautiful, there is not a lot of hard work that you have to do to get a good photo,
Yeah.
right? And that gives you a confidence. It's a positive reinforcement, right? Just like how the
Right.
social media, giving you that positive feedback, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
like, okay, oh yeah, you know what, I can get good photos, right? So it helps in that respect a lot. And even like if you become a professional, it doesn't matter like how serious a photographer become, golden hours is still the golden time to take good photos, right?
Right.
Undoubtedly.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so that no doubt about it, there's no second thoughts to it. And also another thing I want to may mention is the shoulder seasons are also amazing time to take photos, right? The
Hmm.
transition from the what do you call that, fall to winter, summer to fall,
Yeah.
or spring to winter to spring. All those times are also very beautiful times to take photos. Middle of summer
Why?
probably
Why? Why?
not
Why
as
is
much.
that? Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of factors to it. Like, the transition from spring, to kind of summer is like the time. The weather also plays a huge role, right? The sun is generally typically low in the horizon, and it has a beautiful quality to it. It has a beautiful quality to it.
Hmm.
And of course, fall to winter, there's a good chance of fall colors with winter, winterish, snow weather, snowy weather, and things like that.
Right.
Uh, Spring to spring is a good time because there's a lot of greenery around, and winter to spring is a good time because there's snow and there is greenery, snow in
Right.
the mountains, a lot of greenery around. So I think so those are things that we can remember as a thumb rule. Initially, your keeper rate will increase a bit.
And that's an interesting thing that you noted. Like, if you shoot in golden hour, it's easy to get a good shot. So when you don't shoot in golden hour, it sort of forces you to think outside the box, forces you to find the story, forces you to practice all the good things that you need as a photographer, right?
Correct, exactly. But again, to start with, I think it's good to shoot in photo hours because you don't, without doing a lot of photo work, you're getting good photos, and that gives you a confidence in the beginning that
Confidence,
you
yeah.
really need, right?
Right. Right.
Getting good photos. So you don't, yeah, you can kind of, yes, I'm a great photographer. I've got
Right.
good photos. This was shot at close to 400 telephoto lens. It's
Hmm.
not pure landscape photograph, but there is a few interesting things I still like about this photo. So if you look at the layers of sand in this photo,
Hmm.
and it's only the middle patch which is getting. So it was sort of a cloudy day. So as you can see, because of the clouds, the light is not uniform in this
Right,
area,
right,
right? It's a
right.
lot of shadows and lights. You can see the play of light and shadows a lot here,
Yeah.
right? And so that itself, right? Even if you take out the girl and the dog, right, you can see
Hmm.
that there is an interesting light in play here. And then just to add to the whole thing, there is this little cute kid, and
Yeah.
along with a dog walking in the sand dunes. I
And a
think that
sense of
has
scale
a
also,
it gives you a
right?
sense of scale. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely right. One thing
Hmm.
is giving you the scale of the sand dunes. Other thing is, I think it's again has an emotional thing, right? Where you see this girl
Yeah.
walking with her dog, spending the time. So that to me is a very yeah. I felt there is a story right there. When I saw the
Right.
shot, there's a story there, right? Landscape photographers, sometimes a lot of people are very reluctant to including human subjects or any other subjects in a photo. I personally do not belong to that school of thought, and if someone was that to ask me advice, right, I would say no, don't do that, right? I think adding a human subject, we are very much a part of nature. I mean, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, we are all together. We are not like living in a different world from nature, right? I
Right.
think it's about it's about integrating together.
Yeah.
So I think there's nothing wrong in it, and I think they can add a lot of value in a photograph.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's a
yeah.
photo of yours that I really like that you took in the tulip. There's a girl looking back. I think she was wearing a white dress. I don't know if you remember that. In Seattle, I think it was probably.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, I see. I see. I think that was like, oh yeah, I remember that was, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's
yeah.
a girl who was looking back, and
Yeah. I wondered,
the
like, how did
hand.
you find that subject? And was it a random girl or was it
Yeah,
some?
yeah, completely random girl. It was just a candidate. Yeah, I think again, that always look for an opportunity, right?
Yeah. So did you
So
ask her to pose, or how did that happen?
no, no, no. I didn't ask her to pose at all. I don't. Yeah, it was. I think. I think what was happening possibly was. Yeah. See, one thing, right? You can say from her dressing that she has come dressed up for getting herself photographed,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
For sure, I knew that she would be someone posing for a photo, right?
Yeah.
And then I found, I don't know who, I don't remember now, maybe her husband or boyfriend, somebody was probably there taking a photo. All you had to do was just plant yourself behind him, and then you got your photo, right? That's
Yeah.
all you need to do. Yeah, yeah. I think the anticipating that is also, I think, an aspect that I wanted to bring about here, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you will be able to anticipate what might be happening, right? Especially when
Yeah.
you're doing street photography. Nature, yeah, anticipation is a little harder because nature is a little hard to predict. But even here, to some extent, you can do, because sometimes when you see some clouds, right, especially in the mornings, the clouds might be opening up, the sun might come, and in the gaps it might.
Yeah.
So you can have some anticipation. Yeah, I think it's similar to that. I think it was more of an anticipation based on how she was dressed and stuff. Oh yeah, okay, she's definitely a poser. Okay, I'm gonna wait behind her, wait for her. Right? I think that's how that photo happened.
Going back to that desert photo, so what role does post processing play in a photo like that? Because um, I can imagine that you would probably want to do some sort of a dodging and burning in a photo like that to bring
Oh
focus.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I think for especially for a photo like that, yeah, you want your. So to me, the primary attraction here was that human subject the girl with the dog was the primary attraction, right? So you do not want see the light. Definitely, the clouds definitely helped me here. Be creating those shadows in the top and the bottom, and then the brightness was more around the middle. But you do definitely want to dodge and burn there to kind of
Just
still
accentuate this.
emphasize,
Yeah.
accentuate the effect, and directing the attention of the audience towards the
Hmm.
subject, the primary subject there, right? Yeah,
Right.
so that's definitely true, and that changes from photo to photo, right? What exactly is your primary, where do you want your audience to actually look primarily into, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
what
Right.
decides what you burn and dodge. Just don't do random. burn dodging. And another thing, right, where I don't know. I mean, so there is, see, the post-processing softwares have become so sophisticated. There's a lot of context-aware, editing that can do now. We can remove things
Right.
easily, right? So I do not have a strong say in what to do or what not to, because I think I think at the end of the day it's art, and where you want to define yourself, where you want to limit yourself, it's completely up to you.
Right.
What you think is right, it's okay, don't overthink it. If you think post processing is wrong, or if you think too much of it is wrong, it's fine. It's completely, it's your language, it's
Right.
your art. You have to it's
Right.
fine,
Right.
decide what is right for you, right? Don't be too anal about, or don't be even too critical about somebody doing something, right? Extreme,
Yeah.
right? It's okay. It's their line. They are defined. It's their genre. It's, so something. A lot
Right.
of people are kind of doing, like kind of blending photography and digital art together.
Yeah. It's a
So
new
for them,
genre now.
it's kind of a new genre. They
Yeah.
shoot. I mean, there is a moon rising, and then there is a Milky Way, and then there's a sun setting. I mean, I'm just
Right.
exaggerating, but I've
Yeah.
seen sunset colors with Milky Way photos also.
Right.
It's
Right.
fine. I mean, it's there.
Right.
It's if you don't agree with it, it's so be it. It's
I
fine.
think
People
the
have
the definition of what photography is sort of evolving. Right.
exactly. Exactly. Photography itself is a new art, right?
Yeah.
It's only I started after the advent of a camera, right? So obviously it is bound to evolve. I think it will. Yeah. So
You shot this in Ambasundaram, right?
yeah, it's in my
S-
native.
this is not shot in like golden hour. There's something about this photo that speaks to you. So can you just explore what the thought process was here?
Sure, Swami. So yeah, I think it kind of goes back to my childhood, where we used to have this washerman come to our house, and collect clothes, dirty clothes, and then they go get them washed in the nearby water
Hmm.
bodies and bring them back. And when they consolidate, when they basically consolidate clothes from a lot of houses and take them to rivers, so they basically take them on the backs of these donkeys.
Hmm.
Okay, and this was like, it used to be very common in the, probably in the early 60s 50s types,
Right.
and I used to see a couple of them, when I grew up in my early days, right?
Hmm.
And I thought it has completely disappeared. I don't see any people coming to the houses to collect clothes anymore, or carrying them on donkeys and stuff. And most of the people these days, they kind of use the washing machines to wash, right? So this was, I mean, again, randomly exploring in my native, and then suddenly I saw this guy coming with donkeys. I was so excited to see donkeys and a guy walking with it, right? So I was like, oh, I got super excited, right? So so basically, that's how this photo happened. It was a very random occurrence, and I think what appealed to me mainly was because I could connect to my childhood, where this things I think of the past. It's a disappearing thing, right?
Right.
That's what really appealed to me in this photo, or that is what I wanted to tell. Like something that is disappearing. I was able to capture. Right? I was able to see.
There's
But
a the photo has a certain soul to it. It's tough to put in words what it is.
yeah, I think it's the case with most photographs, right? Like what appeals. It sometimes, and it may not even have the same emotional connect to somebody who may not have a background to this
Yeah.
thing, right? I think that's the case with photographs. I think sometimes you take a photo because it appeals to you and not necessarily appeals to someone else, right? I think at the end of the day, you have to be an audience of, you have to like what you take it. That's the thing. It's very important. Right? But
Right.
in this case, right, in this particular photo, a few things. So I mean, of course, for that, just because you're excited, you take a photo, and that the photo doesn't necessarily have to turn out to be decent, right? So you
Right.
still have to pay attention to a few basics, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, you have a choice, right? So the first thing is you have to choose. Okay, well, what do I shoot? Like, do I do a wide angle, or do I do a telephoto of him, or do I do a a 24-105? What do you do? How do you use as a composition, right? That decision has to be taken instantly,
Right.
right?
Right.
So for example, right? Let's look at two options, right? So look at an option where I can use the road as a leading line. He's walking on a road. So roads can they serve as a good leading line, right?
Right.
So I could have used that as a foreground, but what would happen if I had done that is, right, he would become a smaller subject, and the road would have to become the leading line. Or if I compress it and then take a telephoto for, yes, it is possible, but it would become like any other photo, and he would be the only thing. He and the donkeys would be the only thing in the photo, right? So
Yeah.
thankfully, if you look at the background in this photo, there is these palm trees lined up parallel
Right.
to each other. Right? So it was a instant decision to go with the wide
Hmm.
angle.
Hmm.
And then obviously he took a few photos, right? I was just chasing him. And then
Yeah.
the photo that definitely, the composition that really appealed was where he was actually walking, and then his steps, like
Hmm.
his actually step actually led as a leading line into the
Yes.
donkeys,
Yeah.
right? with the
Yeah.
with the palm trees serving as a nice backdrop to the photo.
Feels like you're
Exact.
walking with him in
Yeah, yeah, kind of, right? Because I think the wide angle gives you that. I think they really exaggerate the perspective, right? It can be good at times, but if you don't use it correctly, they can actually be detrimental to the photo as well. And also, I asked about the golden hours, right? Yeah, I think for the story that I was trying to tell in this photo, I don't think I needed golden hours. And also, these kind of moments are so fleeting. They're so spontaneous. You cannot wait for golden hours to shoot certain moments, right?
Yeah.
I
But I
think as a
think you got
photographer,
pretty
they did it
lucky. The
just about.
clouds are not bad. It's
Exactly, the clouds kind of acted, kind of they were pretty good, and they gave me a little contrast between the blue.
hmm.
A bland sky might not have appealed, as much, this photo,
But that's
but
the
the clouds
interesting
really
thing,
helped me.
right? That I wanted to point out. This is a spontaneous photo. You were there and you wanted to, shoot this person, and but it's not like you just took a random shot. It's not like a snapshot. Like there was so much of thought that has gone into making this photo.
True. So I think, okay, the risk of overemphasizing, right? I think it definitely comes with practice, Swami. You spend more time out there, taking photos, and then be critical, right? Be brutally critical about your own work. It'll happen. I think the moment you become too contented with any photo you take, or if you practice less, that is when I think the I think you hit a roadblock,
Right. Right.
right? It happens. If you practice, keep practicing your art, you will get. If anyone can get there, is what I strongly believe, so.
Right. Well, Shankar, this has been fantastic. I could
Welcome.
I think I could talk to you for another 3-4 hours without getting bored. But
I hope the audience is the same. So,
but
thank you,
before
thank you
we
so much.
end, do you have any final words, any advice to new photographers, anyone aspiring to be to you know I want to be like Shankar? What do you have to say to them?
Okay, so I have a few things. Sure. Don't So there is always in any journey, right? In any form of art, there is always bound to be a place where you will feel less confident about your work. It's bound to happen. Okay, doesn't matter. There are days which are going to be terrible. There are going to be like weeks that are going to be terrible. You're not going to have a single good photo that you're happy with, or your audience is happy with, right? I think it can happen with anyone, but have what is called this growth mindset, right? If you have read the book Mindset.
Yeah.
So I think it is very, very important to have that growth mindset. Anything can be improved with practice, deliberate practice. That's one word I really want to emphasize on.
Mm.
Everyone has a bad day, and every good photographer, the best photographer, will have a bad day. Uh, so it is going to happen. Okay, so that's one thing. Number one. Number two, do not try to become somebody. I mean, you don't have to become. I mean, since you took my name, do not become a Shankar, right? Try to find your own language, right? To find your voice. Your inner voice is very unique, and all of us have it in us. I think to find our own inner voice. So in my case, right? I think my Yosemite photos are some photo of from a standard landscape did not give me uh, the uniqueness, or the name. I either the what do you, for lack of a better word, what do I say? People noticed my work only after Ambasamudra.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that is what I wanted to emphasize here, right? Everyone has their own Ambasamudrams.
Right.
Everyone has
Right.
their
Right.
own, and
Yeah.
find that is something, another thing I want to emphasize, and then practice deliberately. Another thing I want to emphasize is, uh, I mean, see, fame. Yeah, it's important, but I think fame is overrated. You become good at what you're doing. I think all the social media fame, if you really want it, will follow. It's okay. Don't beat yourself about it if you're not getting the attention. I think rather invest your time in becoming good in your art. That's something I want to really emphasize, Swami.
Excellent advice, Shankar. I have to thank you for being generous with your time. And
Thank you.
next time we'll do it in Tamil. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
Where can people find you, by the way?
Oh, so you can find me, Shankar Salvady, SankarSalvady. That's my handle in Facebook, in Instagram. What else? That's my website. Okay, shankarsalvady.com is my website as well. Yeah, that's primarily where I post my work.